let's see, what do I do? I wear multiple hats. So on one hand that you know of, I'm a mastering engineer, work with Jared Logan and Zane Callister and all the guys at JTL, as well as Tony Anderson and Jacob Lavalley. And
okay.
There's that hat. And then the other one that I wear is as a system design engineer for an audiovisual integration firm on the East Coast.
Okay, so I have my friend Brian here, who is a nuclear scientist researcher and mastering engineer. And I brought him over here to basically see the most perfect studio he's ever seen. But he's gonna roast it. Obviously, when you're mixing, the ideal scenario is to have 8 guitars and cymbals right by you. He put the drums pretty close to the listening spot, and I think it's gonna be. I think you're gonna be very surprised by how things sound in here. I've had such good luck with things translating. Like if I can get them right in here, then I'm actually surprised when it leaves here that I'm like, oh gosh, this sounds the same, if not even better sometimes. But there are little, maybe there's like 1 or 2 things where I'm like, is this like maybe the best way to have a sub set up, and does that matter, and how much, and what's actually going on? And it's gonna be a learning experience, but he's gonna roast my studio setup. Hopefully you guys will be able to learn from my potential mistakes. I don't think there's gonna be any mistakes, and we can all get value from it.
Okay. So right now what you're doing is you have the sub that's running through there, and you have the ability to adjust it independently in your Grace?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not going through the vocals because I want to use it independently with both sets of speakers.
Okay.
Which I know is not like kosher.
Where in here do you have your crossover set?
I've never set anything up properly. I just plugged it input, output. Can you explain to me how and what?
So what I'm looking for is when you have the sub, because when I turn the sub off, what I want to see is if it's doing any bass management. So like with the sub muted, is it actually sending me the full signal to the left and right, or is it just muting the sub and then I'm losing that lower register because it's just muting whatever's in that speaker?
My guess is you're getting the full signal to the speakers.
The other thing that I wanted to look at is if I turn the sub on, is it actually then filtering? Because like those guys probably have a lower register down to like 35 hertz. But if the sub's in, I would want to use that almost as a 3-way and then have everything from say 120 or 80 hertz filtered to the sub and then reduce it from your larger focales. The question is, with this, can we do that?
I have no idea. I literally didn't read anything. I just plugged it in and was like, sub out, we're good to go. I also don't know the rules of setting up a sub. I was doing a stereo out to the sub. I recently, when I switched it over, something actually changed where when I plugged in stereo XLRs from the sub out to the sub, it dropped like 15 dB. Almost like there was a phase canceling between the XLRs or something, but it wasn't that because I troubleshot all of that.
Okay.
It was only when I hooked in both of them, the level dropped a bunch. So I'm just doing a mono sub out from the Grace to the sub. And I'm going into the sub on so there's an LFE in, and then there's like a bounce left and right in. I'm going into like the right end. That allows me to control the frequency and the volume, whereas the LFE doesn't.
I can see that this is sending its full range, so it's not actually doing bass management, but if I go here, like I can see my filter is its sharp roll off. When I mute the sub, I'm actually hearing what I know is the balance of that track.
Yeah.
So when I turn the sub on,
it's extra.
It's extra.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, okay, this, to me, if you wanted this just for reinforcement of it, like that I probably would actually reduce the level of it immediately.
The output level.
Yes, that's the first thing. So like going into here, like you can actually, that is all the way down, almost looks like.
Yeah, I have there's an actual pot on the sub that's up pretty high.
Have you run pink into all the speakers to?
No, I've never done anything like that. Also, I've never had the luxury of someone adjusting it while I sat here. Could be out of phase, could be like, and it also allows you to change the degrees of the phase.
Yes.
On the sub.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Yeah. Judah actually has that same sub.
Really?
Yeah. I think he has. That's the focal, right?
Yeah, it's the Focal 11, I think.
Yeah, he has that, but he's using that with the Dawn Audio, the Core 15s or the 57s, whatever the heck they are.
Yeah.
So I think they're the 57s, whatever. Iffy. All right. So there's that, and then
I just installed this and opened it.
yeah, go ahead and hit yes. Right speaker is about a half to 1 dB louder than your left.
Dude, you know what's crazy is I always think it's where I'm sitting. I'll hear it and I'll go, oh, you know, I'm just sitting too far on the right. And I'll scoot over a little bit to the left.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Do you want me to go back there and tweak it while you sit here?
Yeah, you're good at the moment. What is something you've listened to that you know backwards and forwards?
John Mayer. I don't know what you did, but it seems like the sub coming in and out is more of a agreeable relationship between both sets of speakers. Before, on the NS10s, when you add in the sub, it was like a wild change. It was like, boom, there's all of everything else, and it was probably too loud. But it also sounded like maybe there was more low mids. I don't know if you adjusted the frequency at all, but in the NS10, when I would flip in there, from the sub. And now it feels like it's not intruding. Overall, it sounds better on both.
Okay.
Absolutely, but it sounds like a more, like it's set up right. I don't know how else to describe the relationship between them, but where like on the Focals before, it did seem like there was like a little bit of, you know, a rub, yes.
Yep.
And now it just feels like it's that bottom end isn't there when it's off, or it's lower in gain, and then when you turn it on, it's still sitting right there. It's not like they're not occupying the same areas as much, is what it seems. But yeah, I mean, it sounds, and just muting it and unmuting it feels much more cohesive.
First is went through and just balanced your left and rights. So what we were noticing is the right was about half a dB to a dB hotter. So now that's now brought, you know, into equal. And then between your two sets of speakers, your NS10s were about 3.5, 4 dB quieter.
Okay.
So now going back and forth, you're hearing the same SPL. And then the sub, I lowered where it's low passes. So now it was at about 80. Now it's probably roughly, if I measured it, it's anywhere between like 65 and 70.
Oh, okay, so subtle.
Yeah, took that out because what you were hearing with the Focals was you were hearing that rub of the extension of the woofer on there. That's where you were getting all of that just doubling in frequency.
Yeah.
So now with it, and then also the sub volume is brought down about 5 dB from where you had it. So it's like you're getting that low frequency extension, but without just this massive low end in your face.
Yeah.
So now going back and forth, like you hear the frequency differences between the fact you have a 3-way and then a 2-way and then a paper woofer and then whatever magical mystical materials Focal uses.
Yeah.
So
brilliant. It's actually alien baby blood.
Helium baby blood?
Alien baby blood.
Alien baby blood.
Yeah, they get the babies from another planet and they take their blood.
Sure. But now with it, this is before we've even touched any other EQ. This is just level and adjustment so that way it's kind of balanced.
Analog hardware.
Yeah. Knobs and whatnot and turning it. I didn't adjust any of the shelves or anything on the Focals either.
How does a low E sound? Well, what are we on?
Turn that up.
Juno X, link in the description. It's great.
That's all we've done so far. If you want, we can dive a little bit deeper and actually look at what the frequency responses of the room of the Focals, and then just seeing how much more we want to mess with them.
Are you hearing anything where you're like, is there a problem, or is it going to open a can of worms? I thought a lot about this after you went to their place and changed their rooms, and I was asking like, yeah, but what about this? What about this? And you were doing Zane's room, and there was like he didn't know that the antelopes had their own, because he was like monitoring through line outs, and there's an actual left and right out on. I was like, isn't there an actual speaker out on the interface, and you could, and so
Yes.
I thought about that, and then I was trying to figure it out with mine. I was like, well, if I got the Grace, then I could switch to the Burl and then go to the interface. But how I have it routed, instead of monitoring through a master fader out, like monitor left and right, I'm monitoring through an audio track in input. So I have my mix bus is literally an audio track, and my input is line 7 and 8 coming from the Burl to the mix bus chain.
Got it.
To line input 7 and 8, right?
Okay.
A speaker correction EQ, I could just then make a stereo master fader, pop it on there, and
Yes.
it would operate the same. And it wouldn't affect any of my mix stuff. It would just be at the very end, before the speaker.
The only thing that's going to be weird is because you have 2 sets of speakers. So what we apply to the focals would not be the same for
right.
the NS10s.
Right.
So essentially what we would want is, you know, a unit that goes between the Grace and the speakers, so that way when you turn, you know, you're doing speaker switching, it's then sending them through their designated EQs.
And that would be like a stereo EQ, like high band.
Essentially parametric, so that way we can adjust it. There's a couple different manufacturers that we can do, but that's like what I was telling you when we do DSP programming.
Yeah.
It's basically a blank slate, and then we incorporate whatever EQs and processing you would need to be in the middle of it, and it's just a rack mount unit. So.
So maybe not do that.
No, because with switching back and forth and the amount that you're changing and turning the sub on and off.
Yeah.
If you were telling me, hey, I mix 95% of the time in here, then I would say let's go deeper. But right now, for what you're saying, you're telling me that this is already much better cleaned up for you.
Yeah.
Then I'm almost saying we live right here.
Yeah.
And if you get into this and go, okay, now I want to go the next level deep.
Yeah.
Okay, we can explore that option.
So I think the next step is I finish a track, mix it with this situation, send it to you,
Sure.
and you listen in your room and go, bro, this is too oversaturated. Take that decapitator off.
Sure. Here's what we could do just for fun. If you want, we can go ahead and do frequency sweeps of the room just to see what's it actually doing.
Yeah.
You know, and if it's semi-decent, then great, we'll live with it. If we look at it and go,
Could be informative.
yes,
Yeah.
educational for the moment.
All right, well, this one's for the viewers. Before we do the sweep, let me know if you think it's going to be perfect all the way across. If there's any dips and valleys, and where you think they'll be. Bonus points if you guess the exact frequencies. But I'm going to bet that it's perfect. It's going to be totally flat. Maybe like a 1/10 of something here and there, or whatever. But it'd probably be perfect.
Let's see.
I mean, you got these big lights, and I literally put this screen in front of the speakers. What could go wrong, you know?
Here, let me change.
Is that a 20 dB diff? This was super fun. Thank you to Brian for coming over and doing this. We're going to do a part 2 soon, so make sure you're subscribed. I'd love to hear about your speaker setup in your room and some things that you have to deal with. Let me know down in the comments. I will be down there reading and replying to them. Also, I want to thank Brian for coming over and doing this. Brian is an incredibly talented guy. And we're going to do a follow-up video with him outside of this whole topic I'm really excited about. Of course, a big thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. I just wanted to show you guys this guitar amp I got earlier this year. I've been using it a ton lately, and I'm just in love with it. So I wanted to show it to you guys again and give it a little highlight here. The Black Magic Reverb from Supro. I'm just in guitar world right now, and I'm about to build my first pedal board and stuff, so I'm super excited. If you guys are looking for a good amp that has 2 channels, it's got reverb, tremolo, it's awesome. I got the cab with it. The cab sounds really, really good. So if you want to check it out, there's a link to it down in the description. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in part 2.